Well, first of all, thanks for coming here. I know there's a lot of great presentations going on in parallel. Hopefully you guys have had a good show. I'll just go through the slides here since they're so visible on the screen. Basically, my goal here today is actually to give, now it's playing games, is to give a really brief update. FreePBX is a huge project. Telling you what's been going on and what's going to be going on in the coming year is way beyond, a 25-minute presentation, or 20 or 15 or whatever we have left. So really, just a real brief update about the project. Very briefly, a few samplings of things that we're working on 2.11. We want to talk to you a bit about endpoint management, because it's always a struggle and a sore point, especially when you're on a PBX that supports dozens of phone manufacturers and hundreds of phones. Anyway, I'm going to, and let me just do a time check now. So I'm going to rush through some of this pretty quick, because my real goal here from my experience in talking at AstraCon is that usually there's lots of questions. People have things they want to know about what's going on with FreePBX. So we're going to run through it. We're going to get to the end. I've got a lot of the developers and involved people on the projects that I'll kind of introduce you to and give you a chance to ask what you really want to know versus what I'm here telling you. So for those of you who aren't familiar with FreePBX, the sum of this slide is it's awesome. There's millions of downloads. The project has the main software, which is on all sorts of distros. We have a FreePBX distro, which equates to FreePBX and the whole Linux and everything wrapped around it. Just this year alone, up to this point, it's gotten about 45,000 installs. And that's not downloads, that's installs, because we can actually count someone actually installing the distro. So downloads, it's probably way more than that. And we're into our 9th year with FreePBX. Just a few words about some of the big sponsors. Bandwidth.com is, I technically work for Bandwidth.com. I run the FreePBX project. Schmo, who several of them are sitting here, are some of the biggest forces in the development of FreePBX. They are the ones who brought the FreePBX distro and run it and maintain it for FreePBX. And they're behind some of the commercial services, the support, kind of the backup we give to a lot of the ISVs, VARs, all of you who are out there making businesses and need fallback. And then the open telephony training. If you're looking for real deep, in-depth training on FreePBX, we sponsor it, and we've got one coming up which we'll tell you about. So, I asked you who's running older versions. If you're running up to something like FreePBX 2.9, it probably looks something like this. Okay, and last year we talked a little bit about all the changes that we made in, excuse me, all the changes that we made in FreePBX to bring a new GUI. There's a lot behind the changes that we put in here. What we've done is, this is one kind of view and screenshot of FreePBX that's out there. This is an example of what we've put in with the customizable views and CSS that you can do with FreePBX. This is the commercial version of FreePBX that's available, called PBExact from Schmo's. It's the same code base. It's the exact same code. They've got a bunch of things added on, but the key is with some, I guess maybe more than simple, but with CSS changes and with changes to the views, but no changes to the code, you can completely change the look and feel. Okay, and we get various feedbacks on the forums and whatnot of people maybe wanting changes or different color schemes or different views and whatnot. If that's something that you're good at or you have people that are good at, have them get in contact with us. We'll go over with you to talk about how you might be able to contribute other views and other looks and feels for FreePBX to kind of further expand the offerings and whatnot. As far as kind of what's going on with 2.11, I'm just going to touch on a few things and then open it up once we go over there. Security auditing. One thing that we continue to see is, you see it on the forums and whatnot, is people getting hacked, people getting toll theft hacked. And the sad thing about that is, we've looked at, system after system, and you find people who get hacked, you find out what the vulnerability is, and it's something that's been fixed 6 months ago, 9 months ago, right? It's available, people haven't gone, they haven't checked, they haven't gone online, or maybe we haven't done a good job of making it really obvious by helping them look at their system, because understandably, when you're running a system, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So a lot of people don't update and bring in new modules, and we understand that, right? That it's always a trade-off. So we'll talk about what we've kind of done there to try to highlight that a bit. Asterisk 1.8 introduced CEL call event logs, and I think CDRs in FreePBX and CDRs and asterisks in general have been an area where people continue to ask, can we do more? They're confusing if you're using some of the fancy features. I'll just touch on what we've put in there and kind of put it back to the community to what to develop. Something, if you use FreePBX on a regular basis, I don't know if we'll have time to demo it, I'll at least show you on some slides, is something that we call destination PopOvers. What's that? And I'll just kind of show it to you, and kind of we'll go from there. So what we're doing, what we're putting into 2.11 on the security front, I assume all of you have used FreePBX. Who here doesn't go online to update their modules or have access to that? Okay, maybe a couple people. FreePBX has a module, online module admin. You can go, you can check for updates. When you check for updates, it doesn't install the updates. It just tells you what's there. Now in the past, when you installed an update, you can go, you can drill down on the screen, you can see change logs, what's been changed in the module, links back to the tickets and all of that. But you really had to scan it to say, oh, was something fixed that was a security issue and vulnerability. What we're putting in, and this isn't a real one, it's mocked up, but when you check for online updates, okay, it's going to pull information about what we know of security vulnerabilities. It's going to scan your own system. All of this is done on your local system. You're not transmitting a bunch of information to us. And if there are vulnerabilities, it's going to highlight it. It's going to let you click on it to get more information, to get links back about the vulnerabilities, to get links back to the tickets that were there, and really put it in your face. If you have your email address configured in to your PBX to send information about updates, it will send you an email about those vulnerabilities. It will put an alert in the system. The bottom line, what we're trying to do is take an infrastructure that's already there and make it really obvious, if we know about it, to look at your system and let you know about about the issues. So for those of you who have maybe not wanted to go put your email addresses or turn this on, I'll just reinforce, none of that's sent to us. Okay, it's all kept on your local system, right? And that's what we're trying to project. And the other thing we'll be doing is right there in module admin, a big, red, yellow, or green badge to click there to configure that and to tell you effectively whether you're being protected or not. So it's red because we're not checking for updates and there's no email address to tell us. So we're going to try to do our part that much more, right? It's still up to you to keep your systems up to date or at least check to see what's out there. CEL support, just real briefly, if you've ever been one to look through the CDRs, you'll look through them. They're confusing. There's sometimes multiple CDRs, which are in fact the same call. What CEL is, the call event logs, is it's something that Asterisk added that basically kind of gives you the full kind of trace of a call. So let's say someone calls in, you do a call pickup, talk to them, do an attended transfer to someone else who parks the call, who transfers it somewhere else. If we had a call like that, when we clicked on the CDR record, we'd end up probably with 60, 100, 150 events that show us the complete trace of the call. Okay. What we've done is we've exposed it inside the CDR report module in FreePBX so that you can begin to kind of look at it, see what's going on, and what the hope is that those of you out there who want to get involved, who really care about this, people looking for billing systems or other details, it's in there now to start playing with. It's in there to start viewing, visualizing, seeing which CDRs are the same calls and all of that, and kind of putting it back on the audience to say, okay, what do we do with this now? What do you guys want to do with it? Or what modules or possible commercial modules or open source modules do we need to develop to really make this a useful part of FreePBX? Destination PopOvers, as we called them. So raise your hand if you've been in FreePBX. Typical thing, I don't know, I want to create an IVR, and my first option is my ring group, my section option is my queue, and I'm going through and configuring it, and you go to choose your ring group, and you didn't create it yet, right? Okay, lots of hands, right? So kind of, of course, we teach in FreePBX, oh, but that's a good thing. It means you have to really plan your thing in advance and draw your whole flow, and it makes you think, and there's an element of truth to that, but it's still a bit of a pain. So what we've done, let's see if the internet connection is good here. And if I can find out how to move a window over to, is that showing up there? Yeah, I am dragging. Yeah, there we go. Do I have to make it smaller? Okay. Well, I have to look over it. No, I do have to make it smaller. Hold on. Oh, where'd my mouse go? So if I can work this way. So we go in to make our, in this case, I'm creating a miscellaneous application, so I'm going to call this my ring group, right? And I'm going to give it a number of, I don't know, 991234. It's the number you would dial to call it. And I go down to here, and I want to create, this is technically challenged at 3 in the morning. I want to create, is that ring group? And the ring group I want to create doesn't exist yet, right? So those of you who laughed and said, what a pain, what do I have to do? And I maybe go create a fake destination, finish what I'm doing, go create my ring group, come back here, point the destination, right? And what we've been asked for many, many times is, why can't we just do this? Now this is the big question, is the internet connection there? So we go and we create our ring group, right? Or we go and we say new ring group, and what happens? The ring group pops up in the modal window, right? Just like you've always wanted it to do. We go, we configure our ring group, we hit submit, and we're back in our miscellaneous destination. There's a new ring group we just created. It's the chosen destination. The ring group exists, right? We can, get along with it, finish our IVR, miscellaneous destination in this case, and move along. So we were really excited to kind of show that because it's a pain point. We give many, many trainings. People have been wanting it for a long time. But just to stress, it was all the work that's been being done, right? Through all those new GUI changes, through the constant work, cleanup, things that usually you don't see going on as an end user, that's enabled us to do that. So lastly, okay, I'm just going to breeze over this real quick and open it up for questions. Endpoint management. Who here still struggles with the complexities of dealing with phones on the systems? Okay. So we've had endpoint management included in 2.9. Andrew Nagy right here is the one who writes the endpoint manager in FreePBX and single-handedly supports and maintains at this point, 12 manufacturers, 110 phones. It's challenging, it's a lot of work, and just keeping up with the rate of new phones coming out with the number of phones and devices that we support is a real challenge. Okay, so coming at some point this year, and it's actually been in beta on the commercial side, figuring out how we bring it into the kind of commercial part of the normal FreePBX is Commercial Endpoint Manager. Who here has been to the booth on the exhibit floor? You're kind of wondering what all those phones are. That is a subsection of the interoperability and endpoint management lab for FreePBX that all the work is going on to bring the reality of hundreds of devices, not just phones, but ATAs, paging devices, like your Cyberlinks, door phones, kind of everything that you need to configure into your system. I am not going to steal the thunder, and we don't have the time. Robert Keller here at 11:40, this same room, he's going to talk about endpoint management. He is going to give a demo and show you a lot more about what we've put together there, right, to really bring the next level of ease of use and what's coming and what's going to be available in FreePBX to do that. So, it's GUI-based, it's drag and drop based where that makes sense, and it's continuously maintained and just a lot of work and a lot of good reception in it. So I urge you to come hear Robert talk. I think you'll be pretty impressed what's there. So anyway, again, really short sampling. If you want to know a lot more about FreePBX, our next training's in January. And January, sunny Florida. I always like those locations in the middle of the winter coming from Seattle. So that's up on the website, and more importantly, I want to open up for Q&A. I want to introduce you to some of the key people that makes all of this a reality. If you guys want to stand up here, right? We've got Tony Lewis, who's the driving force behind the FreePBX distro, and if you've been on the forums, I'm sure you've seen him there. Brian Waters, who is one of the key FreePBX developers. Andrew Nagy, who I already introduced, is behind the Endpoint Manager and a lot of the other, several of the other modules that he works on, maintains. Caller ID Superfecta, Google Voice, that is a constant struggle. But it sounds like it might be getting better with lots of great work from the Asterisk Digium team. At this point, really questions. I mean, about what's going on in FreePBX. Any of these guys can be here answering them. Let me just open it up, and I'll try to just repeat the question if you want to let me know, and or actually, we also have a microphone running around
let me know
the
if
room.
anyone has any questions, and I'll come to you.
Questions?
The popover functionality, is that a single level? Like in your example, if you went to set up that ring group and you realized, oh, actually I need a extension.
So the way we're initially implementing it is a single level. Architecturally, it might be able to go to more levels as far as the way we've designed it. That can get complicated and messy. So initially it's a single level, and what that means is if I could have done the demo if you were in that ring group and you went and chose a destination, you wouldn't get an option to say, oh, create another one, right? That is automatically turned off, even if you normally could. Once we see how that goes, once we see how it's received, once we get more time under our belt, if it makes sense to go more levels, we'll look at that. But it's a single level. Oh yeah, at one level, if I'm in an IVR, right, I could do option 1, 2, and 3. None of them exist. I can do the pop-up, create my ring group, do another pop-up, create my queue, do another pop-up, create whatever, and then submit. What I can't do is the ring group screen you saw in the I couldn't then say, oh, I need to create an extension for that ring group to go to if they're not there. That's the level that it stops. Questions?
Are there any options for trimming the security of listening to like call recordings? Like say you have calls recorded for a couple different groups and you only want group 1 to be able to listen to their calls versus the calls for group 2?
So the question was, are there options for listening to call recordings and kind of giving different levels of, not all or nothing, basically. And the answer to that is, of course, in the user portal, to some extent there is, but it's not fantastic. At the CDR report level, you pretty much have access to everything. There's planned work for new user portal work, as well as other tools which work really well with FreePBX, like iSymphony and whatnot, where there is a lot more resolution of permissions and work going on in that area. But at this point, it's not quite there.
Any other questions?
This is a silent audience this morning.
Nope. Great. Oh, we do have one.
So if memory serves, FreePBX is written in PHP?
It is, yes.
Do you use a particular PHP framework that that's built on top of?
FreePBX does not at this point. Frameworks weren't huge when it was initially developed. There's constant discussion in the development team of maybe we should just completely rip out the guts and put a framework in there. What we've done is in every release, there's lots of stuff that you don't see as new features, which is cleaning up the inside, making it closer and closer to a better MVC-ish type model. That popover feature was only able to be done because of the immense amount of work in the last 2 releases that's gone on to expose it.
Any particular frameworks that you're looking at?
I mean, the framework that we're probably, bulk of the developers are probably most familiar with because they've done a lot of work in other projects as Code Igniter. In fact, we do have chunks of Code Igniter code and helpers inside of FreePBX that we've used, but it's a ways away. Going and doing a full rewrite is a huge undertaking. Other questions? So you're completely happy with it. Gripes about FreePBX? Things we're not doing you want to see us do? No. Multiple parking lots. I plan on going over with Scott here, wherever he is, this afternoon. The question was multiple parking lots. We haven't supported multiple parking lots. Last time I looked at multiple parking lots, because I was going to go and support them, I found that Asterisk was really failing in how they implemented them, and I could not get anyone to tell me a good scenario within the FreePBX realm, right, to make it fairly usable. I'm told that things have changed. I haven't kept up with it, and I actually have a meeting to be convinced or not convinced as to can we get it in there in a useful way. So that has been our stumbling block, so to speak, with multiple parking lots, is the underlying implementation just hasn't been what we felt it needed to be. Anything else? Auto-generate a random password when you add an extension. Yeah, I guess I wonder if there's a ticket in there. We could look at trying to do that even in 2.11. Let me say this, if that's important to you, check the tickets. If there's not a ticket, if there is a ticket, go and like poke at it so it pops up to the top. If not, submit a ticket just so that it doesn't get lost. Because we tend to go through the tickets when we're getting towards what are all the things we forgot that we meant to do in the release. Because we all get kind of caught up in our own projects, kind of the nature of open source sometimes. What's the community asking for? That's something we can probably look at.
Wait.
Than people that can actually get those things written and into the code base. So how do you guys prioritize, are you working on things that are very set projects, like, hey, we need to get this done as far as a handset is concerned, versus I've got this guy asking about multiple parking lots, for example?
So, okay, so how do we prioritize? It's a little bit of a mix. We try very hard to listen to what, to begin with, what the community is asking for from multiple levels. What's going on in the forums, what's in the tickets, what are we hearing back for feedback from trainings, which are a really good one because you see a bunch of users learning. What are they stumbling across? What things could be made easier? There are things that companies will come in and pay for. Sometimes that's a priority. They'll come in and they'll say, this is important to us. We will still filter it. I mean, there's things we say, great, well, the support team will do it for you, but it's too specific. But, so it's really a mixed bag. We try very hard, security, right? That's not a fun one. That's not a cool phone feature. But I have just looked at too many systems of people or people in the forums. I got hacked, right, by a vulnerability that's been fixed for a year now. Right? What am I doing wrong from the project standpoint of not helping them see that their system is vulnerable? I mean, it's easy for me to say, well, you're not updated. Well, we have reasons we sometimes don't update. And so thus those sort of things that we're doing. So that's how we try to do it, is really, what's needed out there. Yeah. Yeah. So what Tony just said, and that's part of it is, what is interested to the developers makes an impact. And I alluded to that when I said we go look through the tickets, because we all get caught up as developers in the things we're working on out of some interest or another, but we still try very hard to say, well, let's look through the tickets, because our minds may have drifted, right? We may have missed some important things that people have been asking for, and thus we go there. And one key thing here is forums are great to discuss, but they have a half-life of about 5 hours. Okay, once it's like the next day, you don't remember it. If you want something, it's a feature request, it needs to be in a ticket, because that we go back and look at. But by all means, use the forums to discuss it, develop your ideas, ask if it's there, whatever. One more question?
Over adding some intelligence into the system so that if you have a series of DIDs in there, that if a user goes to dial one of those DIDs, the system knows that it's a local call and not to go grab an outbound trunk?
Hey, I think the question was, have we looked into doing some intelligence that if a user calls a local DID, the system detects that that's one of their own DIDs and it doesn't send it out a trunk. And an example of that scenario would be you go and you say, hey, I'm doing a phone conference, and you send it out to a bunch of people because there's people who don't work at the company and half the people do, and they all call that DID, and it ends up right back on your system taking up half your PRI, right, to just get back into your thing. So, I've looked at that for years. The struggle there is the dial patterns and some of the sophistication of how FreePBX can deal with dial patterns, modify dial patterns, how people dial. There are ways that you can do that, and in fact, we've added some things in 2.11 that may facilitate it. It wouldn't be quite auto-intelligent. I can talk to you offline. I've definitely looked at that on many occasions.
Like we've created some automated scripts that basically monitor the database and then redo our outbound dialing plans in order to create those automatically. But
well, let's talk afterwards. You might have some ideas that I haven't thought about that we might be able to improve that capability. So it can be a challenge. Is that it? Other questions? So we'll be here until we get kicked out, and then we will be over in the FreePBX booth to answer, if we're not at a presentation, to answer further questions, except we'll be at Robert's presentation. Don't forget that one. There's some really cool stuff that is going on there.
Thanks so much, Philippe. Let's hear it for Philippe. Thanks. So the next session starts at 11. It'll be myself and